The references for credit for telecommunicators are shown here. Before we address this slide, please take a moment to look it over. Notice that the number 100 is used in the denominator of the calculation. This means that the component parts of the calculation each represent percentages of the available credit. Now note that telecommunicator performance represents 40% of the available credit, while the remaining three areas each represent 20%. Let's take a look at each of these individually. Telecommunicator performance is divided into two parts, alarm receipt and alarm processing, with each part being worth 20 points. Let's look first at the credits for alarm receipt. There are two standards associated with alarm receipt. The first is that 95% alarms received on emergency lines shall be answered within 15 seconds. The second is that 99% of alarms received on emergency lines shall be answered within 40 seconds. Because there are two standards associated with alarm receipt, PIAL divides the 20 available points equally among these two standards. Alarm processing is another matter. There are two types of PSAPs that we see in Louisiana. The first is the PSAP that receives calls from the public and transfers those calls to a secondary PSAP for their action. The second type of PSAP is the one that receives calls from the public and transfers some of those calls to other agencies for their action while dispatching fire apparatus on other alarms. Let's look first at the first type of PSAP, the one who receives and transfers all of their calls. For this type of PSAP, the transfer procedure shall not exceed 30 seconds for 95% of all alarms processed. For the second type of PSAP, the standard is divided into two parts. The first is that 90% of emergency alarm processing shall be completed within 64 seconds, and 95% of alarm processing shall be completed within 106 seconds. As with the credits for alarm receipt, since there are two parts to this standard, PIAL divides the 20 available points equally between these two standards. Let's take a look now at how PIAL collects and processes data in these areas. Data for telecommunicator performance is derived in two ways. First of all, the ring time statistics called detail report and alarm processing reports may be provided by the agency being rated. If these reports are not available, PIAL will fall to a call volume matrix that determines the number of telecommunicators needed based on the number of calls received. Let's take a look at an example of how alarm receipt credit may be calculated. Let's assume that the PSAP in question receives 75,000 valid emergency calls during the graded year and has 3 telecommunicators on duty at any given time. The PSAP cannot provide a call detail report showing ring time statistics, so the call volume matrix is used. The call volume matrix indicates that for 75,000 calls, 6 telecommunicators are needed. Because they only have 3 on duty at any given time, they earn 3/6, or 50% of the available credit. That relates to 10 points earned out of 20 possible. Let's take a look now at how things might be different if this telecommunications center could provide the call detail reports required. Let's assume that this PSAP provides a report that shows they answered 93% of valid emergency calls within 15 seconds and 99.5 within 40 seconds. PIAL calculates what we call a fractile percentage. Since the minimum percentage required to earn full credit for calls answered within 15 seconds is 95, they earn 93 divided by 95, or 97.89% of the available credit. And since the percentage of calls answered within 40 seconds exceeds the standard of 99, they receive 100% of the credit available for calls answered within 40 seconds. PIL applies 50% of available credit to each required time standard and then adds the two together. In this case, for the calls answered within 15 seconds, they will earn 9.789 points, and for the calls answered within 40 seconds, they will receive the full 10 points, for a total of 19.79 points out of possibly 20 points. If we summarize the two ways of calculating the available credits, we see that the call volume matrix earned this department 10 points, where the call detail reporting earned this department 19.79 points. It can easily be seen that as long as the call detail report percentages exceed the 50% that's required by the call volume matrix, more points will be earned by providing the call detail report, even if the NFPA standard is not met. For calculating credits for alarm processing, PIAL uses a process identical to the one used for calculating credits for alarmed receipt. When call detail reports are provided, data shown in those reports is used to calculate credits. When it's not provided, then PIAL will use the call volume matrix to calculate the appropriate credits. Let's look now at emergency dispatch protocols for the fire service and credits that might be earned in this area. This area is worth 20 points, or in other words, 20% of the overall credit for telecommunicators. Emergency dispatch protocols contain questions and a decision support process to facilitate correct call categorization and prioritization. Meaning, is this just a fire call? Is it a police call? Or do both need to be sent? And do both need to roll on a priority basis or on a routine response? These documents also contain pre-arrival instructions for use by emergency responders and callers. The key to this credit is that these protocols must be written on paper or displayed on the telecommunicator screen. They cannot simply be memorized. Let's look now at telecommunicator training and certification. Just like the credit for dispatch protocols, this area is worth 20 points. But unlike that area, PIAL divides that 20 points into 10 points credit for training and 10 points credit for certification. Let's look first at training. The Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, better known as APCO International, has said as one of its basic beliefs that training for public safety telecommunicators, both initial and continuing, is a critical element in providing essential services to the public in an ever-expanding and rapidly changing public safety environment. There are two documents used as a baseline for training public safety telecommunicators. The first is NFPA 1061, the standard for professional qualifications for public safety telecommunicator. And the second is the APCO American National Standard Minimum Training Standards for Public Safety Telecommunicator Certifications. Now, APCO's Public Safety Telecommunicator course, 7th edition, has an excellent combination of these two standards in its training program. The second element in the credit for telecommunicator training and certification is the credit for certifications. When a student completes the APCO Public Safety Telecommunicator course 7th edition, they are awarded certification as a public safety telecommunicator. Old certifications such as Telecommunicator 1 or higher, IFSAC or Pro Board certifications are also recognized. In addition, other certification agencies are evaluated as needed. Another means of obtaining credit for certifications of telecommunicators is through an alternate certification process. If the authority having jurisdiction over the PSAP determines that the telecommunicator possesses all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities of both NFPA 1061 and the APCO American National Standard Minimum Training Standards for Public Safety Telecommunicators, then that authority having jurisdiction may certify them. Certification must be done in writing, and it must be signed by the authority having jurisdiction who is making the determination that the telecommunicator is certified. Keep in mind that when submitted with a PIL rating package, this certification is subject to the affidavit signed by the fire chief stating that he believes all information contained therein is true and correct. The final opportunity for earning credits for telecommunicators lie in the areas of continuing education and quality assurance programs. Together, these programs represent 20% of the credit for telecommunicators. PIL divides this credit in half, with half going to continuing education and half going to quality assurance programs. Continuing education is essential in keeping telecommunicators current on methods and procedures for effective operations. Those telecommunicators certified under APCO's 7th edition require continuing dispatch education to remain certified. That said, PIL does not look at the number of hours earned each year, only that the center has a continuing education program that their telecommunicators participate in. Continuous process improvement is the cornerstone of any quality assurance program. The program should be focused on evaluating telecommunicators' strengths and weaknesses so that areas where telecommunicators are strong can be expanded and areas where they are weak can be improved. PIAL does not evaluate the methodology involved with the quality assurance program. We simply look to see if there is a quality assurance program and that the telecommunicators participate in it. As always, we at the Property Insurance Association hope this information has been useful to you. Please do not hesitate to call us should you have any questions or concerns about the contents of this presentation. Have a great day, and thank you for listening.